Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Central Virginia fishing report with Ethan Martin at TaleTellers Fly Shop. How you doing, Ethan?
I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
As always, I'm just trying to stay out of trouble. Was Easter Bunny good to you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did a little bit of fishing and hanging with family, so I have no complaints.
Yeah, there you go. And it's interesting. We were talking before we started recording, and you got kind of normal temperatures, but you're probably a little bit on the dry side right now.
Yeah, we haven't had any sort of like big spring rains. I guess we've gotten a couple, but nothing that's just, absolutely flooded the rivers and everything around here. So, there's upsides and downsides with that. Guess the upside of not getting any of those huge floods is if things progress as they are, then we typically get a really good smallmouth spawn, which we could definitely use on the James. And so the downside, of course, is all of our brook trout streams and just trout streams in general get a little bit more technical as everything gets lower. So that's never fun. So, but everything is a give or take, especially when it comes to nature and fishing. So.
Yeah, and when it gets warmer, the water gets lower. Our legless friends like to show up in abundance.
Yeah, that's true too. I haven't seen any this year yet, though. So.
Oh, you just jinxed yourself.
I did, yeah.
So what should folks expect to see? I guess we're trout fishing is in full swing. We're probably getting kind of to the tail of pre-spawn smallmouth. What are folks seeing on the water?
Everybody that I've talked to has actually had pretty good success out. I mean, the trout streams, we've had a whole host of stuff hatching. So this past weekend, fished a stream, and there was yellow sallies, there was big stoneflies, like almost a size 6, that we saw the husks everywhere from where they had cracked out of their exoskeleton and emerged as an adult. And then we saw a ton of midges. We saw a couple of sulfurs. Some like Quill Gordons. So I mean, this past week was kind of booming. I mean, the heat seems to have everything waking up, and it's that time of the year. So if you are wanting to get out, I would certainly make it a priority here in the next couple weeks, because to your point, if we don't have a ton of rain, then everything is going to heat up, and it's basically going to shut down. So certainly, if you haven't been out, you definitely need to. This has been a really good time of the year for trout or just trout fishing in general. And then on the smallmouth front, for a lot of guys having success on those too, it's still mainly been streamers, dredged either really slow or really deep and just kind of ticked off the bottom. So it's definitely a little different as those fish wake up, sort of like they've got the feed bag on, but they still don't have quite that amount of metabolism and energy just to burn like they do in late summer. So definitely you should consider, if you're fishing like the James or any bigger river, you might need a sinking line or a sinking leader or something like that, because just the fly itself may not be enough to get your actual fly into the zone. So I definitely consider that. But crayfish patterns, bait fish, both of those have been fishing pretty well. In fact, I know a guy who fished this past weekend, and he fished a small, like, minnow bait fish pattern and picked up a decent amount of smaller size fish, which is interesting because, typically your big boys are the ones who eat this time of year, and the smaller ones aren't quite as active. So that's another sort of telling sign when the smaller fish start consistently feeding that, the seasons are changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's been interesting, right? Because I would say it's kind of cooled off, and the evening lows have been ticking up. But it's probably hasn't been hot enough, long enough to really kind of get things moving, right?
Yeah, for sure. So you're not going to go out there and just absolutely blow your mind, but you could go out and catch one of those James River Giants. So I've heard of quite a few people that have already caught fish over that 20-inch mark. So certainly possible, but it'll take work. So.
Yeah, well, if you don't play, you can't win. And I've got a question for you from Kate. It's a match the hatch question, and she has been having issues with her fly selections getting snubbed, and she wanted to know if the thing she should do is go smaller than the natural she's seeing on the water.
Yeah, I mean, if your fly is getting snubbed, so a couple ways you would know that. Like if you are fishing a dry fly, and let's say you're on one of our local brook trout streams, those fish aren't typically super picky. So if I'm fishing a pattern, like let's say I've got a size 12 bionic anon, which is one of my favorite patterns. If I get snubbed like really consistently, they come up and like you can oftentimes you'll even see them not open their mouth to eat it. It's like they just were whacking the fly. So if you are seeing that happen, then yeah, I would probably downsize my fly pattern. But if it's only happening once in a blue moon, it could be the presentation and that you're not getting a true dead drift. So last minute, that fish just decides to reject it. So that would be the first thing that I would tell you to look at is not necessarily let's make a fly change. It would more so be on that drift I just made, was it completely dead drifted, just floating down the river? Or was there a bunch of movement that maybe that's what caused that fish to turn off last minute? Because, he came up and whacked it. So obviously he's interested, he sees it. So you've got that part down. It's just, what is it going to take to seal the deal? So certainly one technique is going to be to downsize your fly pattern. And so again, talking about brook trout streams here, um, on those streams, you've got a whole bunch of insects that are hatching. And so it could be that the fly that you're throwing, maybe that fish last second just decided it was too big for him to get down his gullet. So downsizing to like a size 14 or downsizing to even say a size 16 if you feel necessary. It's definitely something worth considering. And I have in my own fly box, flies that vary in size. But for the most part, I focus on presentation and ensuring that my fly is, dead drift, just like a natural bug, unless I'm trying to imitate a caddis or something. But let's say that's very marginal amount of time that's happening. If, something's jumping on the surface. So, yeah, I mean, looking at everything back, I've heard people say time and time again that the thing you should do is just downsize. So if you are fishing a size 12 uh, March Brown, then just dump it down to a size 14 March Brown. So you can go that route. So as a fly tyer, like I used to, and notice I said past tense used to, I would tie one fly pattern and tie it in a size 10 and 12 and 14 and 16. And then in my box, I'd have all this, beautiful Instagram perfect fly box. But I've kind of shifted my own mentality in that I have different fly patterns that are just different sizes. And so how I kind of operate, and this is mainly just to keep things simple, is I'll start off with a biggest fly I can get away with that day. So, I'll show up and maybe I'm throwing a size 10 or a size 12 stimulator, something huge. And if I keep getting snubbed and my presentation spot on, then I will switch to a smaller fly that's basically just a different pattern. Because sometimes, that's all it takes. And then all of a sudden you start getting those, fish come up and they actually eat the thing. So there's a couple different options for you. I don't have a golden rule of, when this happens, you do this. For the most part, I just kind of play around with fly selection, so kind of my list, if I had a list of, how it tapers down, it would be, I'd start with a size 10 bionic ant. I start with a pretty big one. And then if I get that snubbed, I might go down to like a size 12 yellow Sally, or maybe a size 12 if I want it to be a darker color, like an olive stimulator or a dark brown stimulator. If that gets snubbed in my size 12, then maybe I'll go down to like a size 14 parachute Adams, so something that's going to sit a little bit lower in the water column, and then like a size 16 just normal elk hair caddis, or size 14 normal elk hair caddis. And I personally don't go any smaller than a 16 on brook trout streams, and it's very rare that I would even get to a 16 because for the most part in our area of Central Virginia, you really don't have to have that small of a fly for a brook trout to come and eat it. And so That would be my advice to you.
Yeah. And I guess the only other thing I would add is in terms of presentation, one thing you can do is you can tie your fly on and not use like a clinch knot, but use some type of loop knot so you get a little bit more play in the fly. So if you
Mhm.
think, yeah, so because I mean, on a brook trout stream, I wouldn't really say to lighten up your tippet because I've never found them to be terribly tippet shy, and going really light on tippet creates all kinds of other problems too.
Absolutely. And one way you can test this theory is if you keep getting snubbed and you're fishing a dry dropper, this time of the year, what you can do is just cut off your dropper and tie on a smaller dry fly. So you'd be fishing two dry flies. And so what that would tell you then is it truly the size of the fly or is it just the presentation? And so I know Andrew, he does that a good bit. Andrew works here in the shop, so I'm sure many of my listeners have met him. And so that's totally another option that you can do to see, kind of test out the theory. Is it just the size of the fly, or is it maybe the style of how it looks, or is it just random that the fish bumps it rather than eats it?
Yeah. Well, there you go. And folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us. You can DM us on social media. If we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag, and we're going to drawing for something cool from the shop at the end of the season. And Ethan, before I let you go, you want to let folks know where you are, shop hours, and if you've got any kind of special events going on. I know you're kind of tapering down on the school stuff, but maybe there are a couple things left.
Yeah, so you can find us in downtown Lynchburg, Virginia. So we're right up by the James River. It's about, I don't know, 200 yards from us. So we have a storefront. We also have online shop. You can see everything that we sell. Of course, you can always call us, Instagram, email, all that stuff if you want to get in contact. We do have a calendar on our website that has events that are coming up. Of course, if you look at it right now, you're going to see that we actually don't have any events coming up. And so we kind of are going to taper it off a little bit through the summer season with in-store classes as people are out on vacation and everything. But we are going to have some on-the-water classes that are coming up here soon. And as well, we're going to have Fly Fishing 101 coming up here soon as well. So keep your eye on the calendar that's on our website, and that will tell you exactly when that's going to be.
Well, there you go. And, folks, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ethan.
Tight lines.